Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, joined by most valuable Pete. Hey, Pete, how are you today?
I am great. How are you?
Good. It's a new week, meaning new episode of the stream or skip segment. I introduce it in a very dramatic way. I turn the microphone over to you and you recount let's call them the terms and conditions of what we're doing.
Oh, how
So
legal.
please remind our listeners, old and new alike, what is the point of stream or skip?
All right. So Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows we'd like each other to watch. Each week, we randomly assign each other one of those shows to watch. We watch at least 2 episodes or 30 minutes if it's a feature-length program. And on that basis, we determine if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Without further ado, let me kick it off if you don't mind. You have assigned me a show on Netflix known simply as Griselda. Griselda, actually based on a true story, by the way,
Yeah,
and stars Sofia Vergara. Of course, we know very well, right?
that's right. I think most famous for Modern Family, right?
Most famous for Modern Family. It is one season only, 6 episodes. And let me break down how the show is, and then I'll compare it to what is the actual history of the character named Griselda. So Griselda was a Colombian crime lord or drug lord in kind of the good old 80s, 70s, and 80s. So I think she came to the United States in like 1970-ish. So you can kind of put this into perspective in terms of, the Scarface timeline,
Yeah.
in terms of Narcos, all the other kind of like drug lord timelines, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this was kind of when cocaine was, I guess the cartels were kind of like really gaining their footing in the
That's right.
US. Obviously, everything was coming through, Miami was a popular port of entry. This lady Griselda was making $80 million a month in her
Whoa.
cocaine trade. Yeah. She came from Colombia, and there's different accounts in terms of her childhood, but basically she was from a very low income family. Potentially she was abused. Potentially she was forced to be a pickpocket and do kind of like petty crime to support her parents. Allegedly, she was a prostitute for a while, and then she pulled herself up and she married someone who was in the drug trade. He was not like a super high, I mean, he wasn't like a super big drug lord, but he was involved in the drug trade. Apparently, he abused her and she fled to Queens, New York, and then eventually Miami. So we pick this up in the show Griselda, where Sofia Vergara is basically taking her 3 boys. She's got 3 young sons, and she is escaping her husband, her abusive husband, in kind of like the middle of the night. Basically just woke up the kids, said, get in the car, drove to the airport, took a flight to New York. Apparently it was just that simple. And then she stayed with one of her friends that she knew, also who, I guess she knew from her childhood in Colombia. And she smuggled into the US 1 kilo of cocaine. That's kind of how she got her start in the US. And she told her friend that, she wanted to start clean. She wanted to get out of the drug business. She just wanted good, honest work. Her friend found that, she actually smuggled in cocaine, kicked her out of the house. And then basically it kind of goes through her trials to sell this cocaine. And then she parlayed that into more, smuggled more in, and kind of blah. The real story, I think, is a little bit more dramatic. I mean, first of all, they show her mugshot in the Miami-Dade County Police Department. I mean, she looks like someone who would like stab you. Like
Okay.
they say like her nickname is the Godmother, the Black Widow. Like she looks, if you see her mugshot, like she looks serious. The Netflix show with Sofia Vergara you can tell that they're trying to kind of do two things. And I think this is one of the reasons that it falls flat. So Sofia Vergara, again, who we know from Modern Family, I mean, she is, can we say like the word bombshell? Like she's very, very not just beautiful, but like kind of Latina, curvaceous, and like bombshell, right? So they obviously she's a big name, and she is, I don't know if she's Colombian, but she is Latin or Latina. So she fits that part of the character very well. In terms of how she looks, I mean, they're not even like remotely, like ever going to be confused for each other, right? Like there's absolute, you've got this old grandmotherly looking godmother, Black Widow looking like thug, yeah, who's a real Griselda, and you've got this beautiful Sofia Vergara, right? I mean, they're not even remotely looking like each other. So what they've done with Vergara is they've tried to kind of like play down her sexuality. So I guess what they've done is they've just applied copious amounts of makeup to her face to make it look like she's got kind of bad skin. They dress her very, very, I don't know, like very gaudy, kind of, but like without style, like almost intentionally to make it seem as though like to kind of hide her curves and to make her look like a little bit more plain. You can see how they're trying to like dress her down a little bit. Like she's not that character who's wearing mini skirts. She's not that character who's wearing like low cut blouses. They've intentionally tried to put like a lot of like ugly kind of like leopard skin muumuus on her and like pantsuits and stuff to kind of make her look like just kind of reduce her sexuality.
Right.
Which makes sense. I mean, in the context of the show, I think the problem I have with the show is twofold. One, Sofia Vergara, who I really don't know very well as an actress, but the few times I've seen her, she always seems very bubbly and pleasant and optimistic. She seems to have like a nice personality, to be honest. She has charisma. And in this show, I just don't really buy her as this no nonsense bad guy, so to speak, or bad woman, so to speak. So I think that's a very big mental leap to kind of take someone who's known as being so pretty and so, happy and laughy and smiley and try to now envision her as this very serious, chain smoking, no nonsense, ruthless kind of drug king woman.
Sure.
That's a stretch for me. And the second part is, to be honest, this story has kind of been told before. Like maybe not the Griselda story itself, but you and I have seen enough.
Yeah.
I mean, from Scarface to Breaking Bad to
Blow,
Narcos to Traffic to yada yada yada. Right? That
we know where this is going.
Yeah, it's not that I guess I'm just saying like I'm not really that impressed. It's someone who came from a very rough and tumble childhood. They definitely had some ambition. They had, some intelligence, and at the end they were just ruthless. That's they were uncompromising and ruthless, and to be honest, kind of lucky. Like you see kind of at the beginning of her career, there's like some shootouts and some other, things. And to be honest, just by coincidence, she kind of lived or kind of survived or happened to be at the right place at the right time. And she took advantage of all those kind of like fortuitous things. And then just through, basically slaughtering, all her competitors and enemies, did she become as big and successful as she became.
Right.
And the second problem I have is that there's a level of interest, of course, to anyone who is a major crime mob drug boss, right? I mean, it's just natural that we like to rubberneck. We like to look at, carnage and stuff like that, but there's nothing honestly good about the story. There's no redeeming quality, even if they try to show that, she was a good mother, she cared. I mean, at the end, it's totally outdone by the amount of people that she slaughtered, the fact that she's selling cocaine, the fact that all the illegal things that she's done absolutely is not mitigated by the fact that she was, in some cases, a very loving, doting mother, right? So I feel like the show, okay, it's interesting. There's a story to be told about someone who's kind of famous, but again, they're a bad guy, and I feel like we're kind of maybe not glamorizing crime, but in a way we are, right? I mean, it's the main character, and I guess I'm just not really comfortable watching another show that's, showing someone else's kind of rise and fall, doing something that by all accounts was bad for every single person around her and all of society as a whole, right? I mean, at the end, she is the only person who was kind of profiting from this financially, and at the end, of course, she was killed. So I mean, where is the good of the story? It's not really there, you know? So that's my long-winded way of saying that it's kind of interesting that Sofia Vergara is the lead in this in some ways, again, because it's a story about a famous Colombian woman. She fits that profile. I think that unless she had kind of no other leading woman offers on the table, I really kind of would have encouraged her not to take this role. I don't think, I mean, physically, it makes her look awful. Acting wise, I think it's really hard to distinguish yourself when you're playing someone else, especially a bad guy. I just don't think it like really added any range to her. Although, to be fair, it was nominated apparently for 19 primetime Emmys, and it got 2 wins, which I guess is not surprising on Netflix. So, but some of it was like outstanding period costumes, outstanding lead actress in an anthology. Okay.
My gut tells me that even though this isn't a show or a role that naturally suits someone like Sofia Vergara,
Yeah.
I think that's precisely why she took this role. I think this is a story we've seen previously, and not just with female actors, but with male actors as well, right? Like Vin Diesel in the Babysitter movie, or The Rock in that Tooth Fairy movie, where
Yeah.
you kind of have to, or, even Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop, right? Or in Twins, where you're known for a certain genre. And if you really want to break out and be known for something different, right? I mean, Tom Cruise in the 80s was known as this comedic actor. And then
Yeah.
does these string of highly successful dramatic movies in the early to mid 90s, and all of a sudden now you only think of Tom Cruise, not Tom Cruise, sorry, as Tom Hanks as a very serious actor, right? And then and this sounds like a gross generalization, but especially with female actors, you tend to see that they take these dramatic roles wherein one of the first things they do is they kind of make themselves look unnaturally not good looking,
Yeah.
kind of to emphasize that, hey, I'm more than just a pretty face, like I can really act,
Yeah.
right? And we saw that with Charlize Theron in Monster. I'm not her agent, right? And I know that we'd
You're
all
not.
love to be Sofia Vergara's agent, but
Yeah.
do I understand where she's coming from? Absolutely. Do I think this is a good show based on what you've said? Probably not. And I don't think that's because of Sofia Vergara. I think you're right. I think it comes down mostly to the fact that the trope is kind of played out, right? Like we've seen so many of these movies and TV series about drugs and about how they glamorize it, but eventually it's really bad for the protagonist.
This is a podcast about films and stuff. It's not about taking moral stances one way or another. And
Absolutely.
certainly I'm not qualified to do so. But I have to say, it rubs me a little bit the wrong way that someone who is, by all accounts, by any definition, a bad person who did bad things is kind of like romanticized a little bit.
Yeah.
Like on Wikipedia, there's like a section on pop culture about how often Griselda Blanco is referenced in like raps. Like Little Kim referenced her in this rap. She was portrayed by this actress in this rap. American rapper named his label after this. Meek Mill song referenced this. I get it. But like, why are we romanticizing this? I mean, I know like there's a thin line between saying something and like really endorsing it, but I feel like when you have a show like this and you have a prominent actress like Sofia Vergara, it almost like, again, somehow romanticizes the idea that a very, very, very bad person is somehow like a little bit iconic, you know? And that bothers me. It doesn't mean that I think that we shouldn't make movies about bad people, but I mean, I guess I feel a little bit like Sofia Vergara, and we've been through this before. There are challenges for aging actresses in Hollywood, especially if you're, whatever your, background is. So, I mean, I get it from Sofia Vergara's perspective. There's probably not a lineup of, 10 different shows that she's going to be the lead on. And this maybe was the best of the options. She wanted to be a lead. She wanted, nomination. It's on Netflix. It's high profile. She's got to make a living. No one's stopping her. But I just feel like it's just not cool that these things are given more pop culture attention than I think they really deserve.
All right.
I'm off my soapbox. That being said, as a show, it is decidedly meh. There's violence. There's a lot of cocaine stuff. It's, to be honest, nothing that you and I haven't seen before. There's no really dramatic acting that is so heartfelt that, you've got to, stand up and applaud. I would say that this is, by all accounts, a skip. If there's someone who really, really, really thinks that this is a mooch, maybe I would not really dispute them. I cannot imagine anyone who is like, this show is so good, I've subscribed to Netflix only because of Griselda. Like, I'm just so fascinated by the story, by the character, by, it would be different if Sofia Vergara played this just stunning, beautiful crime boss. Then I could see like, okay, well, you tune in, just to watch her. But again, the fact that she's drabbed down her look, the fact that it is a violent, unpleasant story, the fact that, to be honest, it takes place in the 70s, which is just not really that compelling, and everything is a little bit old, and the things that that people would never get away with today because there's either CCTV or phones or something. Obviously, they got away with a lot more, back in the 70s. It was just so easy to kind of outsmart the cops. Any case, that is my take on this. I think it's a skip, but maybe there's someone out there who thinks it's a mooch.
All right.
Anyway, that's Griselda on Netflix.
Okay, so going the exact opposite, I watched a show on Apple TV called Disclaimer.
Ooh, sounds like a legal show.
And you're right, it does sound like a legal show.
Kate Blanchett.
It stars Kate Blanchett, Sacha Baron Cohen, Kevin Kline, and this is what I would dub as a pseudo-erotic thriller versus just a thriller.
What? What is
Yeah.
that?
It's kind of like, you remember that Richard Gere movie? What was it? Fatal Attraction?
I do remember Fatal Attraction.
Was that the Richard Gere movie where he gets accosted by Demi Moore in the office?
No, that is a great movie, but
Disclosure.
that's not. Yeah.
Disclosure, right. And this is
Yes.
Disclaimer, Right.
Okay.
Right. So this is not too dissimilar from that in the sense that it's a psychological thriller,
Okay.
but it's a little bit on the erotic side. Erotic in the sense that it deals with adult material.
Okay.
And basically, Kate Blanchett plays this documentarian who's just won some massive award.
Okay.
And she's like riding a real high at the beginning of the episode.
Okay.
And then we find out that she receives a book written by the school teacher. It's a fictional book, but the preface says something along the lines of any, what's that word? Any description or any representation of people that seems to
Yeah.
be based on true story
Yep.
people
Only
is,
by coincidence. Yeah.
except they go, is not a coincidence.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a book about seemingly a young mother who has an affair with a young boy while away in Italy.
Okay.
And we find out that Kate Blanchett, when she was young and newly married and had a boy, had her own child, did have an affair while on holiday in Italy with a young man.
Oh.
What we find out is that that young man was the school teacher's son, and he dies.
Okay.
And because he dies, the parents, the school teacher and his wife, blame Kate Blanchett
Okay.
for his death. Now, I wouldn't watch the entire series, but I'm certain that she will be linked to his death.
Okay.
It just hasn't shown up yet in the series.
Okay.
And so, anyway, the mother of the young boy dies of cancer and is
Okay.
trying to get closure before she dies. She confronts Kate Blanchett. Kate Blanchett admits, or it's kind of understood, that she was the reason that he died. She writes this book, she dies, and then the husband, the school teacher, decides in retirement that he's going to publish this book.
Okay.
Now, he publishes it as a fictional book and sends her a copy, sends her husband a copy, finds pictures from his son's camera roll, which has all these like sexy nudes of Kate
Ooh.
Blanchett from that trip as
Okay.
corroborating evidence that she was definitely involved.
Okay.
Sends it to Kate Blanchett's husband, causes them to have problems, blah, 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 blah. Look, it's not my bag. This is
Oh.
a very well-produced TV show.
Yeah, you're describing it. I have to say, your description is very compelling.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly compelling.
Mhm.
It's a very well-acted show. It's obviously well-produced. It looks
Mm.
excellent. Sets are great. All of the above.
Yeah.
But the subject matter is not my thing. Like, I'm not a
Mm.
fan of like these kinds of psychological thrillers or like these pseudo-erotic thrillers. Not my thing.
I hear you. You're a
Yeah,
heist kind of guy.
and that's why I'm giving this a skip.
Okay.
But I happen to know that someone like my mom would actually love it because it's kind of like this
The mom
tawdry,
test.
illicit
Yeah.
affair. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, it's the
Yeah.
kind of thing that would
Yeah.
definitely pass our mom's tests.
Yeah.
They would never admit to it, but it's the kind of show that they would be watching when nobody else is home because they're like, oh
Yeah.
my God. And then what happens? Was she
Yeah.
really involved
Exactly.
in this? Is this
Yeah.
true? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
certain salaciousness to it
Yeah.
that's just on the right side of not being too dirty,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
just on the right side of being on this, on the
Yeah.
sense of, ooh, it's a little too
Yeah.
salacious. It's the kind
Plausible
of thing.
deniability.
Exactly. You know what I mean? That's
Yep.
exactly right. So it's the kind of show that my mom and possibly even your mom would like, but it's not a
Yeah.
show that you and I would sit down. Like, we'd watch it and we'd just be like, all right, it's fine,
Yeah.
but like, it's not got when we look for thrillers, our kinds of thrillers are more like action oriented or espionage oriented, or like the stakes are a little bit higher. Here, the
Yeah.
stakes are, for me, not high at all, right?
Yeah.
But for someone who's in her shoes, it's the ultimate stakes, right? You're
Yeah.
at risk of losing your son, you're at risk of losing your husband. So it's
Yeah.
like your entire career, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think I hear you because I always find that these shows, and I'm thinking back to the one with the lady who felt was pushed down the stairs, right?
The
The
staircase.
staircase.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think like these shows, like there's a compelling mystery, but they kind of drag it out for like an extra 2 episodes. And it's really like a 3 episode show, in my opinion. And they kind of try to stretch it out. How long is this one? 7
I think
episodes?
this is 8 episodes.
Yeah, it's kind of like, look, this is a 3 episode problem. You know, let's just speed it up, right? Not, you're right. The stakes are high. I mean, this is someone's life. Someone died. You know, there's marriages and relationships. But at the end, once you kind of like reveal what is the issue in question, it's like, okay, well, did she or didn't she? Let's just get to the end of it, right? And it seems like they spend like 5 episodes dragging it out and
I'm
back and forth.
certain that there was definitely something going on there, but it's not as it seems. Like
Exactly.
she didn't have this consensual affair with this
Right.
guy.
Yep.
There's going to be some element of maybe they
Yes.
confused it with somebody else, or it was like
Yes.
his twin, or
Of
like
course.
something else.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's going to be like all these illusions or illusions that it was her, but it wasn't her.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be what it seems like it actually.
Exactly. You're right. That's kind of the disappointing things about this, because like I get frustrated because I want to like follow the evidence and like I want to be right, you know, but then I've got, like you said, then the last episode they're like, aha, he had an identical twin brother and that was the one. I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
How was I supposed to know that?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I was following all the evidence. I made a very educated guess, and then you just spring the aha.
There's
like,
always a last second hurdle
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
twists the entire story
Yeah.
in the opposite direction.
yeah.
And I find that to be wholly unsatisfying.
I agree. Like the owl in the staircase, right? Oh, she was
Sure.
attacked by an owl. Like,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not plausible, but I'm just like, really, that's where we're going with this. We saw 8 episodes just for this woman to get attacked by an owl.
Yeah.
Right? And
I agree.
that's exactly it. So it's not my bag. Again, when I see a thriller, like I want it to be like, I don't expect them all to be grand mysteries, but I do want to be genuinely surprised and shocked by the twist at the end. And generally you get that more with these like action thrillers or, you know, espionage thrillers. You're not
Yeah.
going to get that from these kinds of stories because I'm not the target audience. Again,
Nope.
you know, I think our moms are. So I give this a skip.
Let's talk about our assignments for next week, and then let's do a quick ramble. What is our assignment for next week?
All right, so next
I'm on
week
Paramount.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. You're on Paramount Plus, and you're watching a show called Happy Face.
It's a crime drama.
And I'm on Apple TV watching a show called Murderbot, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. It stars one of the Skarsgårds, and it's a sci-fi show. So, I mean, like, which is right in Apple's wheelhouse.
Okay, so that's our assignments for next week. Before we sign off, can we just do a quick ramble about the ending or the season finale of season 1 of Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV
Absolutely.
Plus, starring John Hamm, right?
What did you think of the end?
So first of all, I love the show. I mean, part of it is because I love John Hamm. I mean, we've mentioned more than one. He's my Nick Cage, you know, to use a reference to you. I really like him, and I like the show a lot. Even though I think it's very hard to define how it's categorized. I read that there's a season 2, it's already greenlit. In terms of the ending, I have to say I was satisfied with the ending, or I like the outcome of the show. But like we just mentioned maybe a couple of minutes ago, where it's one of these things where they spring something on you. Spoiler alert, John Hamm is accused of murdering his soon-to-be ex-husband of his romantic
The
partner,
girlfriend,
Sam.
the
Yeah,
ex-husband of his girlfriend, right?
yeah. So, and of course, we know that he didn't. All the evidence is kind of pointing to him, all the circumstantial evidence. And we're, for a while, not sure whether or not he's going to exonerate himself, if he's going to go and have a trial and confess to everything on a stand in terms of why he was actually in the house, which was my guess. Or, to be honest, if he was going to be, go to prison, which is also an option. Then season 2 could be, getting him out. Turns out in the last episode, they just pull something out of the blue, right? Which is apparently the ex-husband broke into her house, which is still his house, and committed suicide.
Right.
She wanting to get the life insurance policy, went and then shot the corpse 2 more times to make it look as though it's a murder, planted the gun in John Hamm's car. The trunk of his car was popping open almost every episode for the whole season, right? Like, which we knew was going to lead to something. Yep. So obviously she popped his trunk open, put the murder weapon in his car, and voila. So I thought it was very satisfactory that he got out of it without actually disclosing that he is a cat burglar now. The disappointment I had, just like we talked about, with some of these last minute twists, is that her ex-husband, Paul, right, was at no point in the prior 6 or 7 episodes of this series even remotely trying to get back with Sam.
Yeah.
In fact, it was clear that he left her for a younger woman who was a waitress at one of his restaurants. There was no indication whatsoever that he was suicidal, that he wanted his wife back, any of these things, right? So it was really, I think, it was just a writer's room saying, hey, we got to wrap this up quickly. And they just added this without, to be honest, anything that supported that this was coming. It was just out of the blue, That was, I thought, like a plot flaw. But apart from that, I was happy with the outcome. And then we see, of course, a very great ending at the end where John Hamm is spending time with his ex-wife, with the kids, threatens a neighbor so that his daughter can be on the Princeton tennis team, and screws over his ex-boss. And instead of joining him on this business trip and rejoining his old firm, he is stealing artwork from his old boss's house, right? So he's obviously committed to being this ongoing petty theft. I really like the show. The things I like about the show are the John Hamm narration, I think, is a nice touch. And I think that if you just listen to his narration, he's quite wise. Like he's actually really narrating his life well and giving like very, I think, poignant observations about life and what's important and what's not important and how you should, kind of manage yourself throughout life. I have to say, I just talked about Narcos and said I don't like shows about like crime and bad stuff. Here's a guy who's basically a petty theft and is stealing, right? So it's hard for me not to sound hypocritical. Yes, I'm less interested in that element. Like, I don't really like his crime side, apart from the fact that it's more often than not a little bit comical because he's not particularly great at it. But I'm assuming now in season 2 that his wife, who's gotten fired from her job, is going to kind of like discover what he's doing, and somehow they're going to tag team and be a very cute husband and wife cat burglar duo.
Yeah, the other question is what happens with the housekeeper who's joining, right?
Ilana.
For a while there, my thinking was that it was going to be Ilana's brother's crime boss who killed Paul. And that would be a great way of doing like a nice bow tie on closing that chapter.
I agree. I thought there was also, I wasn't exactly sure, but I absolutely, suicide was, I thought, the weak way out of this.
Yeah.
That there was a more complex way to show them
I would have almost preferred if he had gone to the house
Yeah.
in like a drunken rage because he had found out about John Hamm
Yeah.
and was trashing the place and then maybe fell down the stairs and broke his neck. Something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah.
And he sees John Hamm there, or someone he thinks is John Hamm gets confused, but it's actually Ilana's brother's boss.
I
Something
think,
like that.
yeah.
I thought it was too neat without setting it up.
I think if you and I had, I don't even think we'd need a whole afternoon. I think if we had probably an hour or two, we could have kind of rewritten a few scenes and we could have, yes, worked in a way that Ilana's kind of crime boss or brother or someone else kind of like led to this. And then I think a more compelling season two, honestly, would have been Ham deciding whether or not he should kind of admit in this very public trial, like including to his kids and family, okay, well, yeah, I was a petty thief, but I didn't kill the guy and tried to get off that way versus a guy just kind of like being found guilty. But then he's like, hey, wait a second. I'm going to spend season two with my wife, trying to exonerate myself because I know that there's some exculpatory evidence here somewhere, that will, help me win my appeal. I think that would have been, to be honest, a little bit more compelling.
I'm not so sure. I definitely agree that it would have been maybe a better end to this season, but
Yeah.
I do like the idea of them teaming up as like this Laurel and Hardy duo of who are trying to steal from like all their rich friends and neighbors.
In a way, like I have to say, I agree. They have a very good chemistry, to be honest, on screen. But I'm thinking about like, there's got to be some other plot twist than to see this for like 8 more episodes. Like that can be episode one, he's back at it. Episode two, they're a couple and they do it together, right? Because she finds out, okay, like what are we doing for the rest of the episodes? It just seems like,
I think it's going to be a little more complicated. I think it's going to be she's going to find out. She's not going to support him. They're going to have lots of problems about it. He's going to get caught. Then she has to, while he's in jail, she has to commit a string of crimes so that they can be like, well, it couldn't have been my ex-husband because while he was in your custody, this is still going on.
well,
And
that's
then
I
by
have
the
to
end
say
of this
that's pretty interesting, Pete. That's pretty interesting.
And then by the end of the season, he gets let out because he's like, all right, well, clearly it wasn't this guy, right? Somebody's still robbing all these houses. And then they kind of break back together.
Remember that other show that we saw with Jake Gyllenhaal on Apple TV Plus where he was
Covers for his daughter. Yeah.
yeah, I think what if it's going to be like the daughter or the son
Oh
who,
man, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And it becomes like this mini crime family, right? Where they spread out
Yeah.
from just the neighborhood to like people in the school.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed John Hamm. And to be honest, I thought for a while him and Ilana were going to like forge a relationship. There was,
I'm glad they didn't.
are you?
Yeah, I like it. I like John Hamm with Amanda Peet more.
I mean, I'm just saying that would have been also like if you want to see a crime couple, they also had a good rapport. And that also combines like a lot of different, I mean, she's first of all way too pretty to be a housekeeper, but let's just move on from that, right? I mean, right. I mean, she's a housekeeper, right? For kind of like the rich and wealthy in the neighborhood. She's using her network and stuff. He's kind of the country club guy, using his network and stuff. Two people that are not assumed to ever be, in cahoots, are not just in cahoots on crime, but then they kind of start a romantic relationship and so on. So not to be, obviously he's with Amanda Peet, and I think they've got very good chemistry, but I have to say, as much as I really loved season one, which I give a must subscribe, I think it's a very rare must subscribe season where I have to say, I'm actually not dying for season 2, just because I have to say, I don't think they've really set it up with a great like cliffhanger. But I have to say, they've done a reasonably adequate job of developing some other characters, you know? Like I love his business advisor. I actually kind of like Nick as a character. I think he's a very complex character, but I kind of like Nick as a character, you know? Like he's got his strong ass gym, he's got the ass mobile.
Yeah.
Even though he's, as John Hamm reminds him all, you know, like, okay, he stole his wife. The guy actually seems like a reasonably, like, doesn't seem like a pompous, arrogant, entitled ex-athlete.
Yeah.
He actually seems like a very romantic at heart, sympathetic guy, right? Like, I thought the scene where he's mad that and they're not even married, the girlfriend that he stole from his best friend, right?
Yeah.
He's mad that she went back and had sex with her ex-husband. Like,
I liked him
like,
after that nightclub scene. That's true. You're right. I started to like him a lot after they decided we all need to get drunk together.
Yeah. Like I kind of like the Nick character as and I didn't think that I would. You know, he actually, I have to say, plays that very nuanced. But that said, those are really the only characters that we really kind of got to know. We got to know the sister a little bit, you know, and see her mental health issues. We kind of got to know the kids a little bit. And I have to say, the kids are not annoying kids. We've seen some super, super annoying kids. Those are not really annoying kids to me.
I think it's also because it's one of the few shows where the kids get a lot of pushback from the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that scene in the car where he absolutely tears his daughter a new one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I was like, okay, man, good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay. So that's Friends and Neighbors. I give that a must.
I still think it's
subscribe. Yeah. All right, Pete, before we sign off for the week, can you read off our social media and YouTube cred?
All right. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. As always, the best thing you can do, like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell.
Could not have said it better myself. So this week we have reviewed Griselda and disclaimer. Next week, I've got Happy Face on Paramount Plus, Pete, Murderbot, Apple TV.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Pete, thanks as always. And we will see you guys next week, next episode, Films and Stuff Podcast. Thanks all.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.